Okay, guys, this is slide 11 of our 60s unit. 11 and 12 really are one topic. I just split them into two slides because I needed room for pictures, but they're both fairly short, and they both deal with the space race. We began the space race back in the 50s with the launch of Sputnik, and the goal is to get to the moon, to beat the Soviets to the moon. If you'll recall, the Soviets will win most of the early legs of the space race in the 50s, and that doesn't change in the 60s. Through the middle part of the decade, the Soviets are still winning every leg of the space race, and that will begin in the 60s with sending a man to space. In April 1961, Soviet cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin will become the first man to travel to outer space. He spends 108 minutes in space, almost 2 hours, and will become the first man in space, returns hero of the Soviet Union. A month later, the United States will catch up when Alan Shepard, and this is Shepard over here on the right, there's Gagarin up at the top, I guess you figured that out, but here's Shepard on the right with his Reynolds wrap looking spacesuit there. Alan Shepard would become the first American in space a month after Gagarin does it. Shepard will go up and basically come right back down. He spends 15 minutes in space. He travels high enough to get into space and then comes right back to Earth. So a very short little visit, but nonetheless, we do get to space. Okay. Now, it is at that point, that same month, that President Kennedy will go to Congress and request that Congress spend $24 billion with a B, $24 billion to put a man on the moon and return him safely to Earth by the end of the decade. Now, that is a large order here, considering that it's May 61. So we've got about 8.5 years to get to the moon, land, get out, walk around, get back in a spaceship, and make it back to Earth in 8.5 years. And all we've done so far is go straight up into space for 15 minutes and come right back down. So we've got a lot to accomplish. NASA is shocked when he makes this promise that we will get to the moon by the end of the decade and return safely. NASA's not even sure they can do it at that point. But they've now been tasked with accomplishing it, so they will move on. Okay? The following year, February of 62, John Glenn will become the first American to orbit the Earth. First American to orbit the Earth. Again, I say American because the Soviets beat us to this. But Glenn would orbit Earth 17 times in one day. Makes it 17 times around the planet in one day before he returns to Earth. Okay? And lastly here, a little technological aside, in July of 62, the United States will launch Telstar, which looks amazingly like the Death Star here from Star Wars. But Telstar would be the world's first satellite to broadcast TV signals. If you'll think back to Sputnik and Explorer 1 and all of that, those sent out radio signals. In July 62, we send up Telstar, which will broadcast television signals around the world, provided that countries have the right receiver. So a little technological first for the U.S., but when it comes to get to the moon, we're still chasing the Soviets.